Someone presently I consider to be a mentor, because out of everyone I've ever submitted work to, Dr. Boyce Watkins was really the first one with any platform of substance to read my work. He loved my work and he brought me on, so much so that, I mean, we're so down that I've already told him that I disagree with his video and I'm going to respond to his video and he's going to share it on his channel. Let me play this clip. So before I even started, let me give a shout out to Your Black World, the Your Black World Network. I know some of you guys are going to be watching this, and thank you, Dr. Boyce Watkins, for being willing to share my work, even though I'm getting ready to disagree with you pretty vehemently. So here's Dr. Watkins in the last 2 minutes of his piece.
You want to know who I support in this election? I don't give a damn. I don't care. It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Because here's the thing. It's like this. It's like when we used to do, when I was getting my doctorate in finance, and we talked about what makes a stock price move. And there's two factors. There's what they call a systematic factor and the idiosyncratic factor. Idiosyncratic is what's specific to that company. What specific thing happened to that company that caused the price to go up or down? The systematic is what's going on in the whole economy. So if the whole economy goes down, then your stock price has a good chance of going down too, right? But the idiosyncratic is what happens with your company. How much money did you make? How good is your company being run? How organized is your establishment? How hard are you working in order to improve your business? And let me tell you like this. The idiosyncratic, the individual factor is always stronger than the broader systematic factor. And let me bring that analogy full circle so you know what I'm talking about here. Black people, we're like that company. We have individual factors based on how hard we're willing to educate ourselves, how much work we put into developing our own institutions, how smart we are with targeting and managing our money, how vocal we are in terms of supporting our own political needs, how well we raise our children, etc. Those are factors that determine how well we're going to do in the next generation. Those are the idiosyncratic factors. Systematic factors are things like systematic racism, who's in the White House, whether or not white people decide to help us out, whether or not social programs are in place. Those things certainly make a difference. I mean, if you sit there and you don't do anything for yourself, then those systematic factors will dominate your life. Who's in the White House will make a difference. If Trump's in the White House, you're not going to do well. If Hillary's in the White House, you'll do a little bit better. You might get an extra welfare check or two as opposed to Trump, who might take it away. Okay, fine. But the idiosyncratic, the individual factors are what matters. And basically, if black people get our shit together, if we are unified, and if we are fighting, if we are educating ourselves, and we are empowering ourselves, nothing can stop that, not even Donald Trump. We will kick Donald Trump in the ass if we come as a force. If we build ourselves for the next generation, we will win the fight. If Hillary's in office and we don't have our stuff together, we're going to continue to sink down. You saw in the last 8 years we had a black president. A black president. Our lives have not gotten better. And the reason they have not gotten better is because we still sitting around waiting for Jesus. We still sitting around waiting for the superhero. Stop waiting for Superman. Be your own Superman. That's it. So no disrespect to Killer Mike and Ta-Nehisi Coates. I wish them the very best, but I warn them against this excessive alignment with these white liberal organizations and becoming these political operatives. I know it's beneficial financially, it's beneficial in terms of the size of your platform, but it's not beneficial in your quest to be a free black man. We need more free black men, more free black women. Free black men and free black women are going to save the black community, not paternalistic white liberals, because they hate your ass too. That's it. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World and the Black Business School. Please take care. God bless. Talk to you soon.
Dr. Boyce Watkins has some great analysis there, but there's obviously some things that I disagree with on very strongly, and I played it in the last 2 minutes because I wanted you to hear his argument instead of me describing his argument to you. His argument really crosses over three very important components, which is racism, class, and economics. And as much as the message of what Dr. Watkins is saying resonates, it does. It resonates with someone like me because I'm doing all those things. I'm working hard on all those things. I'm building I'm taking personal responsibility. I'm doing all those things. But the reality of it is there's more to it. And what bothers me about the conversation a lot of times is that it always ends up in this place where people become apathetic, intelligent, yet apathetic in terms of their political participation. not realizing the implications of the people who are in power, the choices and the decisions that people in power make. It absolutely matters. It absolutely matters who the president of the United States is. It absolutely matters because they are pivotal in creating the structure in which all of us operate in. It absolutely mattered that we had Franklin Delano, actually, let's go back before him, Theodore Roosevelt there to break up the banks and bust the monopolies. It absolutely matters for us to have had Franklin Roosevelt there during the Great Depression to help pull us out the Great Depression and set the framework in America such that we could create a middle class in the first place. A middle class is not a natural occurring phenomenon. And so without a president to create the agenda for us to create and sustain a middle class, we would never have had one. And it absolutely made a difference in 1980 when Ronald Reagan won versus Jimmy Carter winning a second election, because Ronald Reagan took and changed the fundamental structure of our system such that over the last 35 years, the economic gains from our labor has been redistributed to the top instead of coming to people who are giving their labor. So these conversations that always end with, I don't care who is going to be president because it doesn't matter. You know what? It doesn't matter to someone who already has capital and someone who already has access to capital. Because you know what? If you have access to capital or you already have capital, you're right. You're going to do just fine no matter who is going to be the president of the United States. Matter of fact, really, realistically, all I need, let me adjust these volumes before I start busting something here. All I personally need is just a few more options in my portfolio and maybe just not work so many hours. If I could get that, then, you know, my career is diversified enough such that I will be fine, whether it's Donald Trump or whether it's Hillary Clinton. But that's not because of that's just how it is in America, that anybody can wake up one morning and just do fine in America. That's not the true story of America. The reality of America is there is a structure in which we all participate, in which we all operate, that absolutely has a contributing, a contributing force in where we end up. A contributing factor. I don't even want to say factor. That's why I'm stumbling. I don't want to say factor because it's more than a factor in where we end. It is a force that directs where we end. Case in point, right now today, if you are born in poverty, you are much more likely to stay in poverty. That's not because of your idiosyncratic contributions or your idiosyncratic behaviors. That's not because of systematic racism anymore. That's because of the structure of our economic system. If you are born in poverty, you are 70% likely, according to Pew Research, to remain in poverty. And only 26% of people born in poverty stand a chance of getting out of poverty and into the middle class. And out of all of that, 4%, only 4% of people born in poverty are gifted enough to rise from poverty into the wealthy class. That's not based on how hard you work. That's not based on whether or not you are black or white. That's based on the structure of our economic system, which is fundamentally shaped by who is the president of the United States and their agenda. So that when I hear people say it doesn't matter, the first thing I say is you really don't understand. Love you, boys. You know a whole lot of stuff. I respect you. I'm sharing this on your platform. But you're missing a fundamental component of the analysis. Yes, there's individual effort, the idiosyncratic portion that you're talking about. Yes, there are systemic factors in terms of systemic racism and tax policy and everything else. Those are systemic factors. But there's also a structural factor that we must be aware of, and that's the manner in which we play capitalism in the United States of America. The other thing that's in this conversation that Dr. Watkins gives, which is so important to the talk about reparations, that's very important in terms of what Hillary Clinton is trying to do to Bernie Sanders, is race. Race. I, for one, am so tired of having to talk about race, not just because I'm tired of talking about it, I'm tired of having to live it, but because it becomes a stumbling block. People, sometimes we see race too much and we can't see the forest for the trees. To prove my point, and before everyone starts, giving me a downvote, we actually don't give a damn, give me a downvote. To prove my point, answer me this question. Why do you think racism, scratch that, why do you think slavery existed in the first place? I'll give you a second to think about that. Why do you think racism and slavery, rather, existed in the first place? Slavery did not exist because they didn't like black people. Slavery did not exist because America and the slave trade had something against Africa. It did not exist because they had a grudge against people of color. It did not exist because they were disappointed because they didn't have the same melanin in their skin and they were jealous of our strength and of our achievements in Africa. Slavery existed for one purpose and one purpose only, and that purpose was the extraction of cheap labor. Cheap and free labor. Our structure, our system has always, the system in which we operate, the manner in which we play capitalism in America has always been about capital versus labor. Slavery was about capital versus labor. Capitalists in America needed the cheapest labor possible so that they can build their economy and build their industries without the responsibility of paying a living wage to workers. And I apologize to people listening on Spreaker. I see the error that you guys see. So just bear with me. I'll replace the audio after the show. Slavery existed for the purposes of getting cheap labor and nothing more. Racism was nothing more, is nothing more than a tool of white supremacy for the purposes of extracting wealth. How else do you keep poor white people from paying attention to the reality that the problems in their life, their woe is me status, their lot in life is not because of Mexicans, it's not because of black people, it's because of our economic structure and the fundamental way in which we play capitalism. The fact that your landlord has a vested interest in charging you the highest rent possible with giving you and delivering the lowest quality services that he can get away with by law. The fact that oil investors have a vested desire and interest in seeing the price of oil be $5 a gallon for you so that they can make record profits, while you have a vested interest in seeing it be 99 cents a gallon so that you can make your check stretch further. There has always been, and if we limit everything to be about race, then we never address the fundamental problem underneath, which is the competition between capital and labor. That's why I get tired of talking about race, because it is the red herring that has very tangible effects in the lives of black people, that does lead to the killing of black people by police officers because they view us through the lens of criminality. They see us as criminals first before they see us as human beings, but that was purposeful. They had to dehumanize black people in order to justify our enslavement. How else do you get good God-fearing white people who are reading something in the Bible about being kind to your neighbor to look at their slaves and not consider them their neighbors except to dehumanize them? And that trait has carried through for generations to today. But the cause of it was not because they just don't like black people. The cause of it was white, rich capitalists, and some black, needed to keep slavery alive for the purposes of cheap labor, nothing more. And so you get poor white people to be angry at black people and keep them from ever realizing that the problems aren't black people. The problem is the fact that we play capitalism as a zero-sum game in which the people at the top have a vested interest in extracting as much wealth as possible from the people at the bottom and in the middle. And so when I heard this analysis by Dr. Watkins, I agree with the premise that we have the idiosyncratic responsibilities as individuals, right? Our uniquenesses that contributed to us being able to escape poverty, but our structure limits our capability of ever getting escape velocity. I'm feeling that. Gravity. Our structure around us is like gravity. Capitalism is like gravity. At least the manner in which we play capitalism is like gravity. You are only going to jump so high before these economic forces brings your ass back down to reality. And yes, there are some exceptional people, that 4% that the Pew Research showed. There are some exceptional people who can be born in poverty and escape poverty and not just go beyond the middle class, but go into be the top 1%, 4%. But that does not make up America, the average American. The average American is born in poverty and will die in poverty, or born in the middle class, get just enough loans to get to school, buy a home, and die broke in the middle class. While there's a very small percentage who are born in wealth and will never leave wealth, because wealth begets wealth. Capital begets capital. If you got money, you can make money. If you have money, you can risk money. If you have money, you don't have to worry about making the rent. You can worry about creating a business. And so when we leave it to be a conversation about race only and be afraid of these white liberals, it fundamentally misses the mark, and we miss out on the fact that there are some poor, and not even just poor, there's some middle class, and even hell, there's some wealthy white liberals who understand the same argument that this is about capital versus labor. And how are we going to treat labor in this globalized economy? And the truth of the matter is, yes, we have done, African Americans have done just as bad underneath Barack Obama as they would probably underneath Mitt Romney. But it's not because of Barack Obama. This is why I also get upset with this same crowd. You guys want to blame everything and say Barack Obama was just, he's a black president and he didn't do anything for black people. Can we please stop with these intentionally obtuse observations and think for a minute that it has nothing to do with the man in the office? It has everything to do with the office of the presidency and the role it plays. The role it has been crafted to serve, which is a servant, a facilitator of the neoliberal economic paradigm that we currently exist under. It has been crafted and molded. The office of the presidency has been crafted and molded to be a servant to the military industrial complex, which is why no matter who's in office, we're going to find a war to get into. And I would argue that the military industrial complex is nothing more than an extension of our capitalistic system. And so while everyone is scrambling and saying we did just as bad underneath President Obama, do you understand why? It's because of the structure of our system. And I don't see one candidate talking about changing the fundamental structure of our system other than Bernie Sanders. I have not drank the Kool-Aid for Bernie Sanders. I don't care if it's Bernie Sanders or goddamn Colonel Sanders, I don't care who it is. As long as they are talking about changing the structure of our system so that it serves the majority of Americans, so that it serves the average American, I could care less if Bernie Sanders drops out today. My allegiance is not to Bernie Sanders. My allegiance is to doing something so that the average American has a fighting chance. So Bernie Sanders could drop out of the race today. I'm looking for the next progressive that's actually going to address the fundamental way people who work for a wage are exposed to this new global economy. In other words, all of you brilliant people who think it doesn't matter who you vote for really has an impact on how exposed your ass is to the Chinese working class. In other words, a person in China is now in competition with your labor. A person in China who can live on 50 cents a day, I don't know, maybe $5 a day, is in competition for your labor. And what do you need? $100 a day to survive in certain cities, to break even? But it doesn't matter who we vote for. And so you voluntarily disenfranchise yourself because you feel like it's the politically astute or the intellectually astute thing to do, when in actuality you have shot yourself in the foot because you've given over your voice and your opportunity to shape the structure of your system. Purposefully said, the structure of your system, and you've turned it over because you don't think anything's going to change or anything's going to be different.